Hi, Jeff Herring here, and I have a question for you today. Can you take a 5-point article and turn it into a 7-module course, also smaller and larger courses, and maybe even the beginning of a new digital empire? We'll answer that question in just a moment. Well, welcome everyone. This is Jeff Herring, your host of the Content Profit Show. We have a great guest in a moment that we'll introduce in a moment. Just got some announcements I want you all to know about. Our next show will be Friday. Today is Wednesday. If you're listening to this live, our next show is Friday with Dawn, and then we're almost full up for February, which I'm excited about. The other thing I want you to know about, when I'm waking up in the morning, I'm usually kind of scrolling through the phone. I sat straight up in bed when I read what I'm about to tell you. I got an email from Dr. Yildiz, the guy that runs all the illumination publications at Medium. And my goodness, they've created another new publication strictly for podcasts and for live casts. So guess where this is going to be going to get a little bit of additional promotion. So, and as always, hey, look, right underneath, right here, right underneath my name, contentprofitseat.com. That's where you can go to be sitting in our guest seat, not at his house, but, you know, to get all the good stuff we're about to get. Now, I want to introduce to you somebody that's been in my community for years. I'm not even sure how many. And he's got a very unique niche with doing hand-drawn graphics and illustrations for content. So let me introduce to you David Wood from New Zealand. Hi, David.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you, sir?
Great, thank you.
You know what? About a month or two ago, one of the guys in my men's group that we've been doing for 10 years brought his dad, and he fell in love with it. And I was very, very glad he was there because he's 72. And so I was no longer the oldest in our group. So you and I had that discussion beforehand, and I'm glad you're here. How did you get into this graphic illustration, this hand drawing for different events?
Well, look, I've always had a real interest in communication and the fact that verbal communication, often people get crossed wires. We think we're communicating, but whatever we say, people turn into their own unique representation in their head. And I was at a conference once, and I could hear the squeaking noise behind me. And I turned around, and there was somebody who was actually basically graphically recording the conference presentation.
Ooh, I love it.
And I just thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So I got talking to her afterwards, and found out what she was doing, how she learned how to do it, and just went boots and all into figuring out how to do this. And just probably over the last 20 years have sort of honed my skills and created a niche for myself doing large-scale hand-drawn graphics. But what I'm really interested in doing is people just doing real simple stuff to communicate. Basically so that people can understand what you're saying and they really get it.
Supposed to make it clearer, right?
Yep. Clarity leads to understanding. It leads people, and it creates much better connection between people. And you can be very effective, have much more influence.
I love it. And I love what you just said about you created your own niche. Folks, whether you're listening to this live or on the replay, write that down. How can you create your own niche? Reminds me of a quote from singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett, who a lot of people don't know is worth like $550 million thanks to Margaritaville. He said, you know, when I first started out, they couldn't find a niche for me, a genre for me. So I created my own. Like, I love it. I love it. So let's take a look at your article from LinkedIn. And of course, the graphic is a graphic. I bet you drew that, right?
I did, yeah.
Good for you. First thing I thought of when I saw that, as I shared with you before we started, several years ago and several girlfriends ago, for Caleb, my youngest son, we were sitting at an event at church, and some of the girls at the table had multicolored pens and were taking notes. And I looked over at hers, and it was like, just like you said, it made so much more clear. And I said, would you do that for my webinars? Yeah, sure. How much? Because I'll do it for you, Jeff. Okay, we'll go out to dinner a lot with Caleb. And I really got excited about it. And then they stopped dating, and so did that. So I think you've really got something here to help everyone make things clearer. And there's so many ways to do it. Let's take a look at 5 of them here. Break up large blocks of text and make information more visually appealing and easier to digest. Illustrate complex concepts or processes. Love it. Makes information more accessible to people with different learning styles or disabilities. Oh, absolutely. I am incredibly visual. Okay. And so if I can see it, or somebody can, one of the things I remember doing, we used to do something here in Atlanta called NAMS, Novice to Advanced Marketing Systems, twice.
Yeah.
And every time somebody would ask me about something, usually when we're sitting around at dinner, and there's, I pulled out a napkin and drew it, and they were like, "Oh, I get that now." And I remember thinking, I need to just have a book of napkins. That's still on my list. Okay. Number 4, adds a personal touch. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I told you about my buddy Laura West, who used to see the mural behind me.
Yes, that's right. I remember it.
I moved. She would do that kind of like you're talking about at NAMS while you're doing a presentation. And I found I found it so fascinating. Sometimes I'd stop talking and watch her doing it. I was like, well, I better talk some more so she can do this. I just love how easy it makes it. And then number 5, oh, cool. Reflects the advances in neuroscience that recognize the human nervous system as always scanning the environment for threat. What I've learned about that, David, is it's so true, and that some people do and some people don't. Some people do it a lot, or some people don't. I remember walking with 2 guys, 2 co-leaders for one of the small groups. We were at some retreat center. It was dusk, and we were cutting through this little, what I wouldn't even call it woods. It was a few trees and ground cover. And everything I'm going to tell you next happened in a second. I put out both my arms like that in their chest, and I said, "Stop." And they're like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Look." And there was a big copperhead cruising by. And here you'll understand this thinking, because I remember thinking, they asked me, "How'd you notice that?" I remember thinking, how did you not? Because if you're visual too, if you can do this. So all my cop friends told me I could have been one of them, because you notice stuff, Jeff, that other people don't notice. So you're onto something here, bud. So what I want y'all to notice is this is not a long article, folks. And you got lots of comments, even from some guy, who is that? That you've delivered so much information in these five tips. So what we're going to do, let's go over here to our outline. And like I told you before, David, this is a rough thing. It's not set in stone. Your article screams for a course, though, which is why I started here. And all we'd have to do is create a module for each point, because I mean, you could do a lot on how this works with the new nervous system knowledge, right? I mean, every one of this you could teach about, right? Every one of these points you could teach
Yeah,
about easy.
absolutely. There's an awful lot that could go with each piece.
Yes, yes. That's what I always tell people, that what you've read here is just scratching the tip of the iceberg of the very surface of everything. There's so much more. And so, how in the world do we turn 5 points into 7 modules? Okay, I'm going to answer that. But let's first talk about what goes in the modules. Okay. You can do a video training and include in there, this is what so many people that do presentations don't get. And it's so incredibly powerful. I mean, I'm doing it right now. Okay. And so one of the things you could do on every module is a demo. Teach the principle, show them. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if not everybody in the world is visual, but it is the largest cohort, and most of the people that aren't have that as a secondary one.
Absolutely.
And then you could put this article in there, or pieces of this article under every one, a checklist for when they're creating stuff, a template, if that makes sense, a Q&A.
Yeah.
So, and you wouldn't have to do each one of these. I would do the demo in each one, but you could mix and match all these other ones. Now here's the cool thing. Here's how we make it 7 modules out of 5 tips. You want to have a front end module. I call it the Get Started Here module, where you're welcoming them, saying stuff like, "Hey, made a great decision, getting involved, and I want to give you a quick win." And then you show them how to do something. For this, it would be like, basic drawing stuff. Because as you said earlier, a lot of people don't think they can draw. I remember in 6th grade in Kansas, sitting next to a blonde-haired, bowl-cut girl who was incredible at drawing horses. Okay, and I just said, "Draw me a horse." So she drew me a horse, and I said, "Now show me how to do that." And I can still do the outline of the head. I don't remember her name, but I can still do the outline of the head because she showed me the basics.
Right.
And so, I mean, that would be great to give them a great quick win. Oh, I can do this, right? So that's your first module. Modules 2 through 6 are your tips. And then module 7 would be your wrapping it all up. I call it your next success steps module. And where you also offer the next thing for them to do, right? The other thing about this, see, one of the places people get stuck so often in creating courses is when it comes to the bonuses. And they start from scratch. And you don't got to do that. Okay. What I would recommend for this is let's pull something out of those 5 tips and make that a bonus. Okay? I mean, we could make this a 6, or if we could make this a 5 module course, 3 points, and then use 2 points as bonuses. And, the only people that would ever know is you and me, not your customers. And of course, people that are listening now or watching now. Making sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting a little excited?
Yeah.
The possibilities? Yeah, I love it. Now, one of the questions that always comes up is, how do we get traffic to this? Which is a good question. There's tons of ways. I would recommend not only the content here on LinkedIn that you're doing, but also getting over on Medium, because I love turning Medium into a traffic, subscriber, and profit machine for people. It's what it is for me. I can't think of a day that goes by that I don't get new subscribers from over there. And a handful of guests on this show have come directly from there. And right here in your 5-point article, you've really got 6 articles. The original one, and then an article on each tip.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the beauty of it is you've already started that article with the what you put here under each tip. And then from here, we can go backwards and forwards, but you and I will talk about that later. This would really put you on the map. And I did some research today on Medium about your niche, and I didn't see any training offered, within the articles or something to sign up for or an offer or whatever. And Medium's not the only source of traffic. I mean, the demo videos you could put in YouTube. As you built your list, you could send people samples. You could have free and paid webinars, all kinds of stuff to drive people here. Now, the other question that comes up is, how do you price something like that?
Okay? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And y'all are, yours are called NZs, not dollars, or something like that, right?
Yeah, no, we have New Zealand dollar.
Okay, New Zealand dollar. Okay, and there's a big difference between US and
it's a huge difference.
Yeah, okay, that's what I learned last week with another guest. And so I'm going to talk in American dollars because that's all I know how to talk in. And so the couple rules about that are kind of contradictory. One is you price it at as much as people are willing to pay for it. Okay. And the second rule is it's a whole lot better to start low and go high than start high and have to go down. Okay. And so, this could easily someday be a 197, a 297, depending on how we grow it course. I would launch it somewhere between, and we could talk about this more later, 47 or 97, just to get buying behavior, just to get people in. And what we would do is something I call the backstage pass strategy, where you announce that this is coming out. The regular price is going to be blah, blah. Okay. As I build it and do it live, you can get a backstage pass to watch. Okay. And then, like, if it was 97, then it could be 47 as a backstage pass. That's probably what we all do. Because then they get to be there live, which is exciting. They get their questions answered live, which is great. And the way I like to do it, if I've got multiple modules, is I ask for people's input. What do you want to know about?
That makes really good sense.
Yeah, and then they get some of the buy-in feeling of. And the other thing this does, sets you up for the next sale, because when you do a course like this, they get to know you pretty well. And you've got a nice, comfortable way about you. So I think you do fine with all of this. Man, we're just getting started. What kind of questions you got, Dave?
Well, actually, the pricing was one, and I like that backstage pass strategy. I'm not a writer. I don't like writing, particularly. So doing something
nice to meet you. You and me both.
People and building it, and having that backwards and forwards as much goes with my style, I guess.
Right.
And it means I wouldn't have to have it so tight with the content,
right?
Because it would build over time and people could contribute to it. So that one really resonates with me.
Yeah, and I did an article last week, entirely based on somebody's question, because I asked people to ask, their questions when they sign up for different stuff, and it was a great question, and hopefully I provided a great answer. I can tell I'm excited. You sound excited. There's so much we can do with this. So as we wrap up here, David, thank you for being a great guest.
No, it's been great. Thanks, Jeff.
I knew you would be, although we haven't talked a bunch while you've been in my community. I just had this sense this is going to be a good one. So thank you. And folks, like I said at the beginning, if you want to be sitting in David's seat, not at his home in New Zealand, but in his position as a guest, right underneath here yeah, right here, is contentprofitseat.com. Contentprofitseat.com. That's where you get to do what David's done. I will take one of your articles and turn it into some kind of profitable product in 20 minutes or less. And I love it because we're just now at 20 minutes. Yes. So, David, thank you so much for being a great guest. Hang around afterwards so we can talk about where to go from here. And folks, give David a hand, whether you're listening live or on the replay. And we will catch you next time. And you know what to do until then, right? Go use